Hi, I'm Gidon from technologyman.com. The EcoFlow River Max might be the most impressive portable power station I've looked at so far. It has two 600 watt AC outlets, a 100 watt USB power delivery and a 576 watt hour battery that can fast charge to 80% in around an hour, around 4 times faster than any other power station I've tested. And there's an accompanying smartphone app to monitor and control the unit remotely. It even has a removable battery to make it more portable without losing any functionality. I'll also be looking at the accompanying EcoFlow 160 watt solar panel that can charge the power station outdoors. These power stations are perfect for power cuts, camping, travel, festivals and around the house and out and about to charge all your tech. The prices do tend to vary, so please check the links down below. They're not cheap. So I hope this video will help you make the right choice. So let's take a closer look. The EcoFlow River Max comes nicely packaged. Inside the box you get the power station itself, the mains charging cable, an MC4 to XT60 solar panel charging cable, a car charging cable also with an XT60 connector, and a DC 5521 to DC 5525 lead. I'll discuss these accessories shortly. There's also a comprehensive and well presented user manual and a quick start guide for connecting to the smartphone app. There's no case for the power station and there's no included pouch for the accessories like you get with Jackery's chargers. The power station has a clean, modern design and feels well built, constructed of sturdy black plastic with grey trim. But like other power stations I've reviewed, it doesn't have any ruggedness or waterproof rating, so you'll need to keep it under cover. The River Max weighs a pretty hefty 7.8 kilograms and you can see its dimensions on the screen. But you do get a 576 watt hour lithium ion battery inside. To put that in context, an average laptop might have a 50 watt hour battery, so you could charge it over 10 times when completely flat. Or the latest 16-inch M1 MacBook Pro with its 100 watt hour battery around 5 times. Alternatively, you could run a typical 55-inch TV for up to 10 hours or a 60 watt mini fridge for around the same time, probably longer depending on the ambient temperature. EcoFlow's website gives many more runtime examples depending on how you might want to use the power station. Clockwise from the top left, the front of the unit has an LED torch, an 8cm 2-colour LCD display, and below that a 100 watt USB-C charging port, 2 standard 12 watt USB-A charging ports, and a fast charging 28 watt USB-A charging port. Underneath the USB ports is the main unit's on-off button. A short press turns the power station on and turns the screen off and on when it times out, and a long press turns it off. Then there's a 12 volt 10 amp DC car outlet together with two 12 volt 3 amp DC 5521 ports. These DC ports have their own power button. The ambient light above the EcoFlow logo pulses when the display is on by default and is configurable in the app, which I'll come back to. The left side of the unit has the mains charging port, the overload protection switch and the DC charging port for connecting to your car or a solar panel. The hinge door does make a slightly alarming click when you open it, but it's survived plenty of use so far. Below these ports are cooling vents. The right side of the unit has a cooling fan and below that two 230 volt AC outlets with their own power button. These outlets support 600 watts continuous output with a 1200 watt surge peak at 50 Hz here in the UK and many other countries, or 60 Hz in America. Via a little trickery, it can power some devices up to 1800 watts, which I'll come back to. The bottom of the unit has 4 rubber feet with 4 bolts holding in the detachable base, which I'll come back to. Probably the biggest selling point of this power station is just how quickly it charges, which gives it a huge advantage over other units I've looked at. It charges directly off mains voltage with the included ubiquitous IEC mains cable, sometimes called a kettle lead. The same cable that plugs into the back of your desktop PC. You don't need the usual DC adapter, which is one less thing to carry. You can charge it up to 500 watts, which according to the specs can take the battery from 0% to 80% in 1 hour. In my testing, it took a little over that, around 75 minutes to get to 80% charge and a full charge in around 2 hours, which is still very impressive. But this will depend on ambient temperatures and the temperature of the unit itself. In comparison, the Jackery Explorer 500's 518 watt hour battery charges at only 85 watts and takes 7 hours to charge, and the Bluetti, or Power Oak in the UK, AC50S is about the same with its included charger, but does support charging up to 120 watts with a beefier charger. It's generally advisable to charge at slower speeds to extend battery life, and fortunately you can turn off the so-called extreme fast charging in the app if you're not in any rush. You can also charge the unit with a solar panel or via your car's 12 volt output. With the included car socket plug to XT60 cable, the River Max charged at around 100 watts with the engine running, so it should take around 5 hours to charge the battery from empty. The XT60 DC input on the power station will support solar charging at up to 200 watts or 12 amps at 10 to 25 volts. EcoFlow includes an XT60 to MC4 cable which will connect to many solar panels, including their own EcoFlow 160W solar panel. But with the right cables and connectors, you can connect most solar panels to the EcoFlow, and I like that they use the popular and inexpensive XT60 connector, which makes soldering up your own cables pretty straightforward. This is a quite substantial solar panel, weighing just under 7 kilograms, and comes in a grey zippered fabric pouch with a carry handle. You can see its folder dimensions on screen. The solar panel has an IP67 dust and water resistance rating, unlike the power station. The solar panel itself unfolds and then hooks onto the storage case, which has one rigid side that acts as a kickstand. Unfolded, it measures 157 by 68 centimeters and around 2.4 centimeters thick. It doesn't have any built-in USB charging sockets like the Jackery SolarSaga 100, just the two MC4 male plugs. It's also a lot heavier than the SolarSaga 100, which weighs just 3.8 kilograms, and the EcoFlow is far more fiddly to set up. But it is a lot more powerful, 160 watts versus the Jackery's 100 watts. I've been trying to test it here in the UK in winter, but even in a short spell of sunshine, the sun was too low in the sky and I could only get around 10 watts. I'll provide an update in the written article and possibly an upcoming video when conditions improve, to confirm its rated output and compare it to the Jackery and also the Bluetti SP120. With plenty of sun, you should be able to fully charge the River Max off this solar panel from completely flat in under 4 hours, which would be very useful. Or you could get a couple of inexpensive 100 watt solar panels off Amazon and run them in parallel with an MC4 parallel connection cable to charge at the full 200 watts. The River Max supports pass-through charging, so you can still use all the power station's outputs whilst it's charging from mains or DC. The LCD display is the best I've seen on one of these units so far. It's bright, clear and easy to read, and it shows everything you need to know. Like most power stations, it displays power output in watts of whatever is connected, and it shows input power so you know exactly what you're putting in, which is particularly important when you're using a solar panel, which is hugely variable. But unlike other units I've tested, it also shows the discharge time based on the current usage, and the remaining charge time depending on what you're using to charge it. So if, for example, you're running the River Max at its full rated 600 watt output, the display will show just under 1 hour of usage remaining. You could estimate this in your head, but it's very convenient to see the information worked out for you. There are also icons showing which ports you have connected, warnings, and even an animated cooling fan speed icon whose speed relates to the actual fan speed. You need to turn the unit on first to use the LED torch. A single press then turns it on in low mode, a second press switches to high mode, a third press turns on flashing SOS mode, press a button again to turn it off, or a long press turns it off from any mode. It's a useful 1 watt light in low mode and a 3 watt light in high mode, but I prefer a floodlight like on the Bluetti AC50S rather than this focused beam. The unit's much too heavy to use it in this way in most practical situations. Moving on to the USB ports, I'm pleased to see a 100 watt USB-C charging port that supports power delivery, something I've been after for a while, but missing on other units I've tested. This lets you charge even power-hungry devices with just a USB-C cable, from this Lenovo Chromebook to the latest MacBook Pros. It even charged the Lenovo Legion 5 gaming laptop I reviewed recently. But it will also fast charge the latest smartphones or an iPad Pro and lots of other gadgets. The two standard 2.4 amp 12 watt USB ports don't support any fast charging standards, but the rightmost blue USB port supports Qualcomm's Quick Charge 3.0 up to 12 volts and 28 watts. I tested all these ports to their maximum rated output and found no issues. And they can all be used simultaneously as required. The 12 volt 10 amp or 120 watt car outlet is useful for devices like car fridges. It measured 13.6 volts with a multimeter, which confirms its a regulated output and will remain at this voltage as the power station loses charge. I tested it with a 12 volt air pump and used it to charge a Jackery Explorer 1000. I didn't quite get the 120 watt output, but that's the limit on the Jackery's maximum input. I then tried using this DC output, the DC input of my Hota LiPo charger, which charges the batteries for my RC cars. I was able to charge a 4S 16 volt battery at 125 watts, which displayed 140 watts in the EcoFlow. You can pick up cheap, powerful DC only LiPo chargers, so this could make a handy power supply for them. There are also two 3 amp 12 volt DC outputs with the popular 5521 plugs with their 5.5mm external and 2.1mm internal dimensions. I'm pleased to see both of these ports are also regulated, again measuring 13.6 volts with a multimeter. I put one of the ports to use using the supplied DC 5521 to DC 5525 cable plugged into a 12 volt LED lighting strip. This used around 20 watts according to the EcoFlow's display, but as I've commented in other power station reviews, I can't find too many other uses for these ports. The only thing really missing with the DC output of the River Max is a wireless charging pad, like on the Bluetti AC50S. The main attraction of these portable power stations are the AC outlets. There are two 600 watt pure sine wave AC outlets, which are 220 to 240 volts in the UK and 110 volts in the US. I confirmed their pure sine wave output, which is important for sensitive electronics, with a graphical multimeter. EcoFlow have put some thought into the positioning of these outlets, even taking into consideration our rather oversized UK plugs. Firstly, they're at the side of the unit, so even larger plugs don't obstruct other ports or the display. Secondly, they're rotated 90 degrees and both sockets face each other, so two plugs, even larger ones, can generally be used at the same time. My only minor complaint is the power button to turn the AC sockets on and off is obstructed by the front plug, so it's hard or impossible to access depending on the plug size without removing the plug first. The built-in 600 watt inverter is powerful enough for many items you'd want to plug into a unit like this, but as I've covered extensively in my other power station reviews, you need to be aware of what you're plugging in. A cheap energy monitoring plug is a useful investment. The EcoFlow does have an interesting feature for devices with greater power requirements. Its X-Boost technology, which is enabled by default, will let you plug in higher wattage devices up to 1800 watts. This is an interesting concept, but you need to make sure you understand how it works. The output of the unit still can't exceed 600 watts, with a brief surge to 1200 watts. What the X-Boost technology actually does is to dynamically lower the output voltage of the unit so you can still run devices with higher power requirements. If you recall the formula power equals current times voltage, a derivative of Ohm's law, by lowering the voltage of the output of the power station you can still run the device but at this lower power. This is much clearer with an example. If I run this 1600 watts hairdryer off the mains, you can see the energy monitoring plug shows just over 1440 watts, or around 230 volts times 6.3 amps as measured by the monitoring plug. If I plug this into the River Max with X-Boost turned off in the app, the power station shuts off with overload flashing on the LCD screen and the ambient light flashing red. When you turn X-Boost on again, you'll get a warning message which is worth reading. It's really only advised for appliances which don't have strict voltage requirements, typically items with heating elements like this hairdryer for example. Now I can run the 1600 watt hairdryer, albeit with less power, but it's still very usable. The energy monitoring plug now shows the voltage drops to 145 volts, pulling 4 amps of current, which equates to around 580 watts. It's a useful feature, but I'd be careful using it. I don't think it should be on by default, and I'd only recommend turning it on as needed. I'm happy plugging in this hairdryer since it's not mine, but I'd be very careful plugging anything in with sensitive electronics, and although EcoFlow suggests power tools, I wouldn't plug in any of my power tools with X-Boost turned on. I'd stick to devices with heating elements like this hairdryer, a sandwich maker, small fan heater or a toaster. And it's important to note you're still only getting 600 watts of output, so it'll take longer to toast your bread or dry your hair. Still, it's a clever feature and would be very useful in an emergency or for camping where it could save you purchasing low-powered camping-specific kit. I did have an issue where I left the AC on with nothing attached and came back to the power station completely drained less than 24 hours later. The AC sockets do consume some power even with nothing plugged in, so you need to try and remember to turn them off. The latest app update mentions an AC timeout setting which might fix this issue, but after updating I still don't see this setting. EcoFlow also advertises the River Max as an entry-level UPS or uninterruptible power supply. So for example, you could have your desktop computer plugged into the River Max and the River Max plugged into your mains. Your computer would bypass the power station and run off the mains until there was a power cut, where it would switch across to the power station. I tried this feature and it worked fine. My computer carried on with no interruption after I pulled the plug from the main socket. It works in exactly the same way as my APC ES700, which is a dedicated UPS, except it doesn't offer any solution for gracefully shutting down your PC like the APC unit does. EcoFlow do state switching is only less than 30 milliseconds and doesn't support professional grade 0 millisecond switching, but I imagine it's good enough for most people. There are lots of uses for this, not only obvious use cases like your desktop computer or household router, but I also use my UPS for 3D printing, where printers can be running for hours on end and even a short power cut can ruin a print. And it has the added bonus of providing far longer battery backup than most consumer UPSs. I tested the claimed 576 watt hour capacity of the power station both at full 600 watt load with X-Boost on and at around 85 watts with X-Boost off. Running a 1000 watt heater with X-Boost, I measured 477 watt hours with an energy monitoring plug. These power stations will always have conversion losses, but this was a little lower than I would have hoped, working out at about 83% efficiency. And surprisingly, running a 100 watt incandescent bulb with X-Boost off, I got even less, only 448 watt hours, which works out at 78% efficiency. When I measured the Jackery Explorer 500, which has a 518 watt hour battery, I actually got 549 watt hours. The 500 watt hour Bluetti AC50S was very close to the EcoFlow at 463 watt hours. The power station is very quiet most of the time. The fan does come on as needed, but most of the time it's barely noticeable. At full output you'll hear it. I measured around 47 dB 1 metre away, around 10 dB louder than background noise. The app, which I'll discuss shortly, lets you monitor the temperature of the power station, but the outside doesn't get too hot, as you can see from the FLIR thermal imaging camera. I mentioned briefly earlier that there are 4 bolts through the power station's feet. The River Max has a removable battery which basically turns it into the more compact EcoFlow River. You halve its capacity to 288 watt hours, but you still impressively retain all of its other capabilities, including its 600 watt output. The LCD display actually shows you have this additional battery installed with an icon that it took me a while to identify. Turn the unit off, remove the 4 bolts with a supplied Phillips screwdriver and pull off the base cover. Then pull out the additional battery and reattach the base with the 4 included shorter bolts. You'll need to store these longer bolts somewhere safe for when you want to reattach the extra battery again. A quick release mechanism would have been nice. You'll notice the battery icon is now missing on the LCD display and charging power will be halved also, but the unit will still charge in the same time. Otherwise everything is the same, but now the unit weighs 5.2 kilograms and is more compact and transportable. You can go the other way and buy an EcoFlow River and then purchase this battery at a later date. Unfortunately, the integrated battery is not user replaceable. I really like this modular system, but it'd be even better if you could replace both batteries. These lithium-ion batteries only have a 500 cycle lifetime, and when the integrated battery eventually fails, the unit won't function, even with a brand new additional battery. If you have multiple power stations, you could connect the mains cable from one unit to the input of another unit for double the capacity, but this isn't something I can test out. This is the first power station I've tested that can be controlled by an app, and this gives it a few handy control and monitoring functions. Unfortunately, you do need to create an account to use the app, which I feel should be optional. You'll then need to link the River Max to the app. Tap the plus icon, find the River Max, and then press and hold the IoT reset button underneath the light button. Then follow the prompts to connect your power station to your wireless network and link it to the app. This will enable you to operate the power station remotely, even over a cellular connection, which might be useful. If you're outdoors, you can connect to the unit directly, although it took me a while to work out how. When you get the option to choose your wireless network, tap on Use Without Internet below the Connect button. I found the unit operated more reliably and faster over a direct connection, so if you don't need the remote functionality, you could use this connection indoors also. The River Max only supports 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi, so if your router is set to 5 GHz only, you'll need to use this direct connection mode anyway. You'll probably be prompted to update the power station's firmware, which did take a while, but it's nice to see the app and power station can easily be updated with new features and bug fixes. The app shows much of the information on the unit's own display, but you can also monitor the internal temperature and you can see more accurately how much usage time or charging time is remaining. You can also control the light, DC and AC outputs and probably most importantly turn off and on X-Boost. As I alluded to earlier, I'd highly recommend downloading and connecting to the app if for nothing else to turn off X-Boost and only turn it on as needed. I'd really like an X-Boost button on the unit itself. You can tap on the ambient light power button to turn this light off or click on its name to configure it. You can decide whether you want the ambient light to turn off with the screen, adjust its brightness, and you can choose a lighting effect and colour. If you tap on the settings cog, you can configure the power station setup and check for any firmware updates. Probably most usefully, you can turn the beeps off, but you can also turn on AC slow charging, which is not a bad idea if you're not in a rush. It will keep the power station a little cooler and quieter, and most importantly extend battery life. It drops the charging power from up to 500 watts to around 110 watts. But personally, I don't find the power station noisy, and the fast charging is one of the most useful features of the River Max, so I leave it on most of the time. There's also an option to limit the maximum charge level. It's not exactly clear why you'd want to do this, perhaps again to extend battery life, but the option is there. And you can limit the output from your car's outlet and manually select between solar and car charging for the DC mode if you have any issues. There's even a specifications page which is useful for reminding you of the capabilities and limits of the unit. I did have a few issues when I first connected to the app. It took a few attempts, but since then the app has worked fine. There is a noticeable delay controlling the unit from the app. For example, when you tap X-Boost, it looks like nothing has happened. You need to give it up to 10 seconds to send the command to the power station. But overall the app is well designed and a useful additional way to interact with the power station. This is by far the most well-rounded power station I've reviewed so far. The build quality is good, it has a clear, informative LCD display, and the accompanying app makes controlling and monitoring even easier. The fast charging is probably the single most impressive feature of the River Max and is something I'd like to see in more power stations. And I'm pleased to finally see 100 watt USB power delivery, which is particularly useful for charging the latest laptops. The 600 watt output from the AC outlets is probably enough for most people, and the X-Boost technology is an interesting concept, although it does need to be used with caution, as I've covered. I was a little disappointed in the measured capacity of the unit. 448 watt hours is a fair bit lower than the spec 576 watt hours. And it is heavier than the Jackery and Bluetti 500 watt hour units I've looked at, although I do like the flexibility of the removable battery to bring down its size and weight. It's a very practical solution when you have mains nearby to quickly top it up as needed. Perhaps a quick release would make it something you'd pop on and off more often. And whilst we're on batteries, EcoFlow quotes 500 cycles for this power station, which is typical for lithium-ion batteries, and for occasional use that's probably plenty. But for heavy users, it would be nice if the integrated battery was user replaceable, or EcoFlow switched to lithium iron phosphate cells, which support many more charge-discharge cycles. The EcoFlow 160W solar panel makes a very good accompaniment to the River Max, and its 160W output is far more than other solar panels I've reviewed. It also has an IPX67 weather resistance rating, something the River Max is lacking. It is quite pricey though, and little fiddly to set up, and the extra power output does come with additional weight. When we have some better weather, I'll do some more testing, perhaps comparing it to the Jackery SolarSaga 100 and the Bluetti SP120. Based on my experiences so far, I'd have no trouble recommending the EcoFlow River Max to anyone after a portable power station. If you're after something in EcoFlow's range a little cheaper, also consider the EcoFlow River, which has the same functionality as the Max, just without the additional battery, which you can still purchase later. If you don't need the fast charging and 100W USB power delivery, the Jackery Explorer 500 and the Bluetti AC50S are worth considering. They're both cheaper than the River Max, and they both weigh less. The Jackery has more capacity than the EcoFlow, but a little less output of 500 watts, and the Bluetti has wireless charging, but only 300 watts of output. I do have a full review comparing these two power stations. There'll be a link on screen and down below. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have the River Max, what do you think of it? Or if you found a better alternative, I'd love to hear about it. And as always, if you have any questions, please ask. I read every comment and I'll do my best to respond. I do hope you found this video useful. Please like the video if you did. I'm releasing videos every week on the latest technology and how to get the most out of it, so please make sure you subscribe. And don't forget to tap the bell icon if you want to get notified as soon as a new video gets uploaded. Thanks for watching.